Poddin My Noggin, hosted by CK Sims, creating a platform to elevate, educate, and heal by creating a space where people can share their stories of struggle, triumph, and redemption. CKS Media.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Poddin My Noggin. I am your host, CK Sims, and today I am very excited to have a great guest, Dr. Christina Laporte. Correct? Did I say
Yes.
that correctly? Wonderful.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for being here. So I am a lover of reading. I have always loved reading immensely. So when I heard about your book and your publicist reached out to me, I was like, I want to read that. Send me a copy. And I remember getting it. And there's a lot going on in life at the moment. And I was like, okay, I got to sit down and I have to read it. And sometimes when I approach these things, I'm like, well, I don't know if it's going to be any good, right? Because you don't know.
Right.
You've never read this person before. Well, let me tell everybody at home that it is very good.
Thank you.
A very good book. And we're going to talk about it on this episode. But thanks for being here. Christina, tell us about, because you are a respected and revered cardiologist, correct?
Correct.
Correct. Perfect.
I hope so.
Tell us about, say, the beginning days of Christina's life. Like, how did that look and how did you get into medicine?
So I grew up in Italy, Bologna, the oldest university, the town of the oldest university. And I decided to be a doctor when I was about 12. And that's because I always ask myself, what is the most I can do with what I have? I actually, when I was very young, I always asked myself that question throughout my life, starting then. And so I decided to become a doctor. And eventually, after finished medical school in Bologna, I came to the United States, to Brooklyn, New York. And I did my internship and residency in internal medicine. And I practiced for 20 years. And after 20 years, I just felt like I wanted to do something more, something different. And my favorite specialty was cardiology. And it was very hard to match a fellowship of cardiology when you are like in your, past 40s. I mean, like mid to late 40s. And so while I was waiting to do that, which eventually happened, I was reading different things just to pique my interest in other things beside medicine. And so I came across this book, is a nonfiction small book by Ayn Rand, the famous author. And she wrote a nonfiction book called The Art of Fiction, among other things, all the novels. But this is a jewel of a book, because if you know everything in this book, you really are a good author. And so I just was amazed to discover that if you're an author, you can create your own world, and you invent characters you want to meet, and then you can make anything you want happen. And I got to tell you, before then, I hated writing. In school, I hated writing. There was this nightmare that was called il tema in Italy. Once a week, they give you something to write for 2 hours about a title. And it was a nightmare for me. But at that moment, I just, all of a sudden, I said, I want to try to write a novel because this is wonderful. You enter your world, you create your thing, And of course, the background, it was going to be my medical world because that's where I inhabited for years, right? 2 decades already then. And so, and then if you think about it, it's beautiful as a backdrop for a thriller, because we deal with life or death. And I always wanted to write thrillers because thrillers was the genre I love. So we deal with life or death. We have the pressure of time. As doctors, we need to know how to read people. Same thing as an author, because how you create characters. And as a doctor, you read people to make a diagnosis. And then you have to be able to integrate tiny little instances into a sum, as a doctor to make a diagnosis, as an author to create a mystery. So there was a lot of overlap and a lot of beautiful drama into this world. So that's why I decided to start writing medical thrillers. And, I didn't have any formal training, so I had to have a coach. It took me a while to get good enough to get an agent. And I mean, it was really long with lots of rejections. And finally, I got a good agent and I got a good publisher. And now I have 4 novels because during the rejection, my cure was keep on writing. So I have 4 novels that are coming out one after the other, which I wrote while I was waiting.
Okay, so many things. So let's go back to 12-year-old you for a second. Can you repeat what it was that question that you asked yourself throughout life?
Yes, what I just asked myself, what is the most important thing I can do that I obviously enjoy doing with my abilities, with my intelligence, my, whatever things I have, obviously. And medicine came to mind as I would really enjoy it because I love science. I was good in math. I was good in reasoning thing, philosophy and things like that. And so I thought it was just, and then it was very exciting, the human body. I mean, what's more difficult than that? So it was challenging, exciting. That's just how it came through. And in Italy was probably the most difficult faculty you could choose. Now, of course, there is physics and all that, which were appealing to me, but not as much as, I don't know, it almost looked like cut and dry, the rest of it. This one was human, it was bloody, it was passionate. There was this thing, about human beings.
I just think that
was interesting.
The way you said that, though, is really powerful. What is the best I can do with what I have? I want people at home to just stop for a second and think about that. Right now, in your lives, at any point in the future, what is the best that you can do with what you have? Do you know how powerful that kind of statement, that question is?
I think it is. But I think people should ask themselves that. And of course, not do things for others, what the other people think, that's what it is. You have to choose it for yourself. For me, it was medicine. For other people, my son went to physics. I didn't. And sometimes I thought about it. What would it be like to do physics instead? But, every person may have a different answer to that, of course. Nobody should choose for you. You should choose for yourself.
And it should be definitely, I apologize. I have a new puppy. And this is my first podcast interview with a new puppy. So this puppy wants to play right now.
Good for you. Good for him.
She's going to have to wait until we're done. But no, it's definitely a fantastic question and a wonderful way of reflecting. And I think the simplicity of it is the part of with what you have. We always think, well, if I had $10 million, I would give so much to charity, I'd give back. But what is the best you can do with what you currently have? Right? Or if I was really well known, I'd write a book.
Right.
What's the best I can do right now with what I write a book? Maybe it's not going to be a bestseller. Maybe it's going to be your first book. It can be applied so many times. I think that's very inspirational and very wise for a 12-year-old child to ask themselves that and then put that to work. So you went to school for medicine, and that's no small feat, y'all. By the end of the story, when you were you got a lot of rejections and things, when you were telling that, I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, you kind of, by what you've already described to me, you seem to be someone who's very persistent. And
you have to be.
Yes, right? And what was it? In Italy at that time, was it difficult? You said it was a hard track to get into the faculty of medicine. Was it not also especially hard to get into as a woman during that time?
Actually, in Italy at that time, the number was open. So you just had to have the necessary grades from high school. In Italy, you go from high school to medical school. there's no college in between, but medical school is 6 years. So you study all the things that you would study in college here. So you end up graduating at the same time. But now there is a closed number there too. But at the time, it wasn't that difficult to enroll. And I think about 20 or 30% people, were women. I honestly never really felt that the fact that I was a woman prevented me from doing anything, to be honest, because cardiology is a male world. I mean, if you think about it, much more than just internal medicine or regular, just medicine in general. But I never felt handicapped by the fact I was a woman. I mean, there were times, most of all in Italy at the time, where, there were, embarrassing moments, and maybe it was just the Italians, how they are, unfortunately. But it wasn't. It's not like it was an impediment to my career. I actually knew that I didn't have any big future in Italy. It was very, very hard to get into a specialty. You had to know somebody. I mean, it was not just being a woman or being a man. In Italy, unfortunately, it was easy to get into medical school, but very hard then to do something with it. And I have a lot of my colleagues in Italy who graduated well and did not have a very good career. I mean, they just, they have patients and everything, but they would just work basically for the government. Totally socialized medicine. So I always wanted to come to the United States where, things were much more free. In the United States, I couldn't have never done what I did. I mean, in Italy, I couldn't have never done what I did here. For example, go back into a specialty, cardiology, at the age of 40. I mean, it was very hard there. But here, if you work hard enough and you want something enough, and there is a small chance, you actually can eventually get it if you persist. The same thing for getting published. And in Italy, there are certain things that are kind of impossible, unless you know somebody, or, it's just, it lends to...
Well, there's layers, right?
Layers, yeah.
The layers of bureaucracy that don't...
Of bureaucracy, exactly. So it's much more difficult in that sense.
So, just to me alone, I love that statement that you just made, that you never felt that being feminine was an impediment to your career. I think that is incredible and wonderful. But also, I just want, while you didn't feel that, I also still want to call attention to the fact that you were trailblazing, essentially, like a cardiologist in your 40s as a woman in a male-dominated world in the United States. That's also breaking glass ceilings, and something to be very proud of, and something that's very inspirational. And I am a feminist, so I always get very excited when I meet women who are just... you're just gonna do it. You just I feel like that's what your mentality is. This is what I wanted to do, so I did it. Yeah. Right? Yeah, you have to be persistent. I love that. So so how long did it take you to get into cardiology, and were you then also a surgeon?
No, I was a medical cardiology. I did some of the procedure, angiograms and things like that. It took me about 3 years to match a fellowship, during which I had to basically do research for free. I mean, just volunteer to do research because I had to show that I really wanted to. So I got a partner for my practice because I was by myself. And so she could cover for me. And 2 days a week, I would go from drive up to Los Angeles to do research and in a lab. And so I published a couple of papers, and then it took me 3 years to match. I mean, applying every year. And I almost gave up because it was so hard. But then finally, I also, if you think about it, I had a family, I had 2 kids, a husband and 2 kids, and I lived in around Newport Beach, which is an hour south of Los Angeles, and an hour and a half north of San Diego. So I really couldn't go across the country to do this fellowship. I couldn't apply to New York and just say goodbye for 3 or 4 years, 3 years. So I had to apply within a certain distance.
Yeah.
And so, but I finally matched at UCLA VA, And so I did that, and that was hard too because I had to commute. I had to sleep in a hospital when I was on call, and actually in a hospital bed I was sleeping sometimes. I'm in an empty hospital bed.
Everybody thinks it's always so glamorous being a doctor and all of those
I
things.
know, right?
It's not, is it? It's
I
not
couldn't go
really
home.
glamorous.
It was so too far.
Yes,
It was a little crazy.
I can imagine. And how long did you work as a
At the
cardiologist?
VA. It was a 3 years program
So you did that for 3 years.
to become a cardiologist. Yeah.
And then do you have to do a second residency when you get done that?
Well, no, that is a fellowship.
Okay.
So there is a internship is 1 year, and then there is internal medicine, which is 2 years residency. And I'd done that right away after medical school when I came to the United States when I was younger, and I was in Brooklyn at the Long Island College Hospital in Brooklyn, New York. And then I had this 20 years of internal medicine, and then I went back, and my teachers were actually younger than I was in the fellowship. The fellowship comes after residency. So if you want to subspecialize further, there is another 3 years. And I became a medical cardiologist because I started with internal medicine. If I had started with surgery, then I could have gone into a cardiac surgical fellowship. That's a different path.
Okay. Well, I can tell that there's a lot of your years of experience
In there.
in this book. So, yeah, let's start sort of looking at. So so this is your fourth book?
There was a first book which is not published yet. It will come out in the 2026. It's going to be the prequel to this other books that are out. And then the first book which got published was Dissection, which is behind me.
Okay.
And that was in reality the third book I wrote, but it's the very first one which got published. And so that one is the same character, the one you hold in your hand. So there's going to be like a trilogy. The prequel is coming out in 2026. It's called Dying to Remember, and that's the story of the PI, Kirk Miner, and who is in both other Dissection and A Change of Heart. And Kirk Miner is a special brain. Is like a medical detective. He has some weird medical knowledge. That's why he consults for the police when there is a crime with medical background. And so in the prequel, Dying to Remember, which comes out in 2026, I'm explaining the story. How did he acquire this special medical knowledge? He had a terrible accident. His brain gets crushed. He basically dies, and they do experimental surgery. And he wakes up. He doesn't recognize his family. He is in love with a different woman who he's never met, and he has special medical knowledge. It's like Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson in one head. And then he has to solve his own problem. But Dissection was the first one which got published, but all this book can be read independently.
That's what I was going to say.
You don't have to read one before the other because the story is completely self-contained. It's just the character.
So the prequel is the one that's going to come out.
Yes.
Dissection is the
out.
third book. This is the second.
Dissection is the second book.
Second book.
The first is coming out. Dissection is the second book, which was out in 2022. And this one is the third book with the same characters.
Okay, so I have to get my hands on Dissection. And you said, what is the name of the new book, or has it not been named yet?
It's Dying to Remember.
Dying to Remember.
That one is the first book I wrote, which by now it gotten re-edited so many times because I learned everything. But that's the book I used to learn the technique to write.
And what's the fourth book?
There is a fourth book and a fifth book, but they're not out yet. One is they have to still to be edited. One is finished but not edited.
Okay.
And then there is another one. I just have 100 pages written. I'm writing it now. But I kept the characters because I fell in love with these characters. I couldn't give them up.
Well,
Kurt Miner and Jack Mulville.
this is good, but so we're gonna come back to that because I gotta ask a question. What we're gonna do first, though, before we start talking about this book, is we're gonna take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
Okay.
Partner today with CK Sims and Poddin My Noggin to get in front of an audience that cares. You will be supporting mental health stories, tales of resilience, and uplifting content, aligning your brand with bringing goodness, authenticity, and kindness front and center. This spot could be yours. Do you have a story of struggle and resilience? One that you want to share with others and possibly help someone through their own struggles? Find the link in the show description and fill out the guest form today.
Welcome back, everybody. Before the break, we were talking to Dr. Christina Laporte, revered, my gosh, cardiologist, and author of Change of Heart. So she has her big poster right behind her, but I have the actual hand. And we were just talking about the 3 books that she's written in this particular prequel. There's also 2 books that are coming. We just don't know when, but that's fun. So let's talk about Change of Heart. So I love the name of the book. And I'm not going to say why. And what's interesting is because I'll tell you, whenever I do an interview with an author, I get nervous, right? Because I'll tell you why. I'm afraid I'm going to let something slip of what I've read in the book that would potentially ruin the book for somebody else. So I have to
be careful.
No, but I think there's certain things that I could talk about that won't ruin anything in the book. So this Change of Heart, I will tell the audience, and you'll find out why when you read it, that is aptly named, more than you can imagine. And I will tell you something else. When I started reading this book, there was a couple parts where I was like, what? There was one of the first things that happens in the book had me squeamish. The detail of it described it very graphically, as you would because you're a doctor, right? And I felt that when I was reading it. The characters in this book, and now I know that there's more of them in the world, so I have to go read dissection. Like I have to get my hands on a dissection. So Miner is an interesting character. And you had mentioned actually before that while they are the same characters, the books stand on their own. Even though it's a prequel, this is the third dissection, the second. And you did a really good job of that because while I didn't actually know that there was a book, but there was lots of references in the book, in the storylines that pointed to things that happened before the book. But it's very self-contained. And I would have to say, though, in this particular book, I found Miner's personality to be very interesting in the sense that he feels so torn in what he's doing because he has such a passion for what he's doing and like this calling to solve. But the pull in his own personal relationship and the issue with his child. The issue with his child, brilliant. Like when you think about crafting a story, Peter's experience and what's happening there is just brilliant addition to shape Miner for me. It made me realize that he's a person. You made him a person.
Of course.
Right?
Thank you.
And someone I wanted to root for. Right? Now, my favorite character in the book, which maybe by design, is oh my gosh, Bloom, Agent Bloom.
Charlotte Bloom.
Yes. And so what I really loved about her introduction I don't know if this was intentional. It could have been because you seem like a very intelligent woman. Um, it's almost like when she first came in, it was like she was there, but she didn't seem like she was a part of the story that much. Like when she was first introduced, there was almost like a detachment with Bloom, if you will. But then as you continue reading, she's popping up a little bit more, and you see the story start to shift, almost
Right.
focus just from, say, Minor and what's happening outside the hospital, and then starting to incorporate more of Bloom. And I'm like,
Right.
okay, who's this Bloom chick? Like that's who I'm thinking as I'm reading along. What's
Yes.
happening here? And I can share that she's an I don't want to say novice, but she's a rookie FBI agent,
Yes.
right? Um, I feel like novice wouldn't
Well,
be.
she is a little newbie.
She's newbie, but she's so intelligent, though,
Right.
right?
Right.
Like, so she's
Yes.
so intelligent. So I feel like, that
She,
there's a struggle there.
you
And
know what you're saying about Bloom. I just want to say something. Bloom was a minor character in Dissection. And I mean, you're very intuitive in picking that up. That you see is like an appearance like blooms, like her name. But because it was a minor character in Dissection, she actually helped Jack Mulville prevent World War III.
well, and
She
that's
was a
that friend.
she was a clerk in an hospital, and Mulville was looking for something extremely important, which he needed in order to actually prevent World War III. And she really helped him. And in Dissection, yeah, it says, if you want to work for the FBI like you're doing right now, let me know when you finish college. And obviously she did. And now in Change of Hearts, she is a cyber specialist in the, a special agent in the last 3 months of the 3 years probation. But it is interesting that you picked up that I wanted to introduce her as that's that young woman there. I mean, obviously you didn't read the book, but you still picked up that kind of
There was
way of introducing it.
Yeah, the way you introduced her was
Yeah,
interesting because it was slightly disarming in a
I
sense.
kind of slid it in. Yeah,
You did, yes. That's
yes,
exactly how it felt. It's
yeah,
but then it's all of a sudden she's like, oh wait, no, she's
right.
actually
She's the protagonist. Yeah, all of a
yeah,
sudden.
and her relationship with Mulville is very interesting as
Right,
well because we don't. I didn't read Dissection because I didn't know it existed.
right.
However, you could tell that there was lots of weirdness in that sense. And when I say weirdness, I
Yes.
mean like friction, if you will. But
Yeah, because he almost sees her as a daughter, which is a very big problem because she's in the FBI. She doesn't want to be protected. She wants to be in action. She wants to finish her 3 months so that she can be a full-fledged FBI agent who risks her life every day. And so she doesn't need a protection of this man who doesn't have any children, and basically, and he's like a gruff, rough, undiplomatic person. I mean, you should read Dissection. It's kind of funny. I had a lot of fun writing about him, and who was like obnoxious and self-centered. He curses all the time, and then at the end becomes a hero. And it's very really unlikely of him to feel that way about someone. Usually his life has been. One of detachment from people. 9 out of 10 people are morons. On occasions, the one who's not gets so pissed off that doesn't even want to hear from him after interacting with him.
so
So
Malville gives me older Italian New Yorker vibes. That's what he gives me, just as an FYI. And what's interesting
interesting.
about it is my aunt married into an Italian family. And so I am the non-Italian Italian son who lives upstairs of them. So
Right.
they live downstairs, and I live in the apartment
All right.
upstairs. And so I have lots of exposure to the culture. Most importantly, the food, because it's the best food ever. But yeah, so when I think about Mulville, that's who I think about. It's like an older Italian New Yorker, like very brass, very like no nonsense type of thing, right?
Right.
And but their relationship is really interesting, and the way it progresses is really interesting. Let me tell you something though, Dr. Laporte, you had me missing my bedtime. I am always in bed at 10 every night, and I could not go to bed without finishing the book. And it took me, it was 1 o'clock in the morning because I was so into it.
Wow.
I was like, I read it in a sitting.
Are you kidding?
No, I'm not kidding. I picked it up, I think, at 12:30 in the afternoon,
Wow.
and did a few things around the house, had dinner, came back, kept reading. It's very normal for me to read a book in a sitting, especially if it's a good book.
Oh, really? Okay.
And the I just wish we could literally talk about all of the pieces, but like, let me tell you, there's so many things I didn't actually see coming. Like, I had no idea. And at one point, all I'll say is I was convinced, actually.
Don't give away anything, please.
I'm not. I was convinced that Bloom's love interest was the perpetrator.
Okay.
That's all I'm going to say. I was like reading, and I'm like,
yeah, but don't say anything, otherwise you give away now.
Yeah,
because you can't give away either positive or negative. You know, otherwise,
true.
Don't do that.
That's true.
I wanted to say something, if you allow, about the squeamish part, because I don't like write squeamish stuff. I just put it on that one first page because I mean the rest of the book is really not squeamish at all.
No, it was just
the reason I wanted to do that was to see what it really is. You know, this is a bad thing. I mean, and I just kind of describe it from a scientific point of view, you know, but I just wanted to give an idea how destructive, you know, that is, you know, when you shoot somebody. Or
I think that's why, though, it was squeamish to me, is because of how accurately and scientifically you described the event. It wasn't glazed over, and it wasn't vague. It was
right.
pinpointed. And so at that point, I will tell you, I was a bit worried. I'm like, is this the whole book going to be a bit squeamish?
No, it's not. Please reassure the readers. It's not.
It's not. It's
I couldn't read a book like that. Is a whole page. The whole book is like that. I don't like torture. I don't. You know. I mean, I don't like. You know, too many gory details, and I mean, I don't like myself. I don't want to watch stuff like that. I don't want to read stuff like that. So I try to actually contain I try to limit myself. Even in the medical details, I have to exert some discipline. I only give away what's necessary for the readers to know.
Yes.
Because it comes spontaneous when you know so much about a field to kind of show off, you know, that you know this and that. But the readers are not interested in that. They are interested in the story. The story is the most important thing. Well, and if you gotta look up something in a dictionary, it's not very thrilling.
This is true. I will agree with you in that sentiment. I read a book, I think it was last summer, and it was a medical thriller. And I won't say who it was by, but I enjoyed the story, but there was a lot of pieces about the book that I was like, what does that mean?
Right.
Right?
Because that's not good. Yeah.
They were describing procedures and parts of the body I've never heard before.
Right.
And like, there was one time I was like, okay, well, I need to understand what this means. So I'm going to Google it. And I really wish I had not. It was not pretty to watch. So that was one of the experiences I had last summer with a book that was just too technical, if that makes sense.
Right.
I love a bit of technicality because you get to learn, right? You get to learn about different things, but in a way that's easily digestible, if you know what I mean. So yeah, so what would you want the audience, people who are watching or listening, what would you want them to know about this specific book?
So the mystery, it starts with the mystery. The change of heart starts with the mystery. And the mystery is this. The number of heart transplants all of a sudden goes up, skyrockets in New York City. And the doctor should really be happy about it, because usually there is a shortage of heart and this and that. But the reason that the number of transplants is going up is because the number of suicide is going up. And these suicides are performed with precision. People shoot themselves in their head, and they're actually avoiding the area of the brain that is in charge of keeping the heart beating. So the brain gets destroyed, but the heart keeps on beating. And also they occur in front of a hospital. How convenient is that? So the heart can be harvested right away. And so this is the mystery that is throughout the book. And then, of course, you have to read the book to find out why that is, and how it's getting done, and what kind of twist you're gonna see at the end.
And I'm glad I asked you that question, because that's more than I would have given away. Right? Because I was like, what do I say? What do I say?
Is the start, is the mystery, is the core mystery. So
it is
hopefully people will want to read the book to find out.
Brilliant mystery. Aptly named, as I said, and it's not slow, but it's not so fast that you feel like your breath is fully stolen. It does give you periods to sort of breathe, but very nice pause. It seems, I guess what I'm trying to say in a long way around is that it's very well paced.
Thank you. Well, the romance also, there is a little bit of romance, which is integrated with the plot. It's not like separate, but it gives you a little rest, because you can't just grind your teeth all for hours.
But I also love that
you gotta take a breath.
A little bit of family in there.
Yes.
Family dynamics.
Yes.
Mystery and intrigue. You're trying to figure out more about Mulville, really.
Right.
Because he's not a super front and center. He is, but he's not, right?
Right.
He's there. So you're like, where does he really fit across this whole
right
Then you empathize with Peter's mom and Miner's wife, right?
Right.
She seemed like you, actually. Maybe now I think about it, she might be you. So yeah, it's a great story with twists and turns. And something that it's one of those things that I could see myself, because I'm a type of person, books that I really enjoy, I'll read more than once. So you never get that first time magic back. Mm-hmm. But if it's a lazy summer day, I'm on the back terrace, it's the type of book I'll pick up and read and enjoy all over again. So for anybody who is out there, Change of Heart by Dr. Christina Laporte. Gotta go get it. Where is it available?
It's available on Amazon and in bookstores, Barnes and Nobles, and
And when was it released exactly? I think it was relatively.
It was released February 4th this year.
Oh my goodness! So it's only been out for a month and a half, essentially.
Yeah.
And is it doing well? It should be doing well.
It's doing fairly well, yeah. But okay. It's difficult to know. Because it's such a short time that it's a little hard to know, but at least the feedback I got is great, and I hope people read it, and I hope they go to Amazon and give me reviews, because I really need reviews to get some. I like the feedback from my readers. That's the thing I value the most.
I will review your book, but I'm also going to go and purchase Dissection.
Thank you.
And I don't know why, but you're going to say the name of the prequel, and I'm going to remember the second you say it. But
Dying to Remember.
I got
that comes in 2026. By the way, Dissection, it did very, very well. Dissection was a bestseller Amazon chart book, was number one political thriller, number two medical thrillers. in the United States, and it was a #1 spy thriller in UK. Yeah, it was #6, I think, medical thriller in Australia. I mean, it did very well in all English-speaking countries.
I love this.
Did very, very well. I'm very proud of it. And I have a blurb from Lee Child on dissection. And Tess Gerritsen for Change of Heart I have. So
yes. And
I'm very proud of those blurbs.
Do you have plans of having it translated?
Dissection, it was translated.
Okay.
Change of Heart, it hasn't been. It has to be really successful in the United States first, I think, in order to be translated.
Okay, awesome. Because I know Italy has a big
wonderful
book, right?
Yeah. Yes.
And any plans for audiobooks?
Oh, they're all available in audio already.
Oh, they are.
Yeah.
Is it you reading?
No, it's actually not a good idea. First of all, with my accent, it would be terrible. But usually authors should really be doing that. You should have a professional person. That's what it does for a living, you know.
Perfect. And so you've got 2 books. One's written, not edited, and 100 pages of another book written. Still a part of the series.
Yes, the other 2 again part of the series. So
that is wonderful. And
be a 5-book series. But again, they're all going to be independent. It's just Kirk Miner is throughout, and Mulville is in most of them. Bloom is only on Change of Heart. There is a small appearance of her in one of the other books that's coming.
Okay, because that was the question I was going to ask.
But Kirk Miner and his family are all over. I mean, they're all in. You know, that's a must.
I would have loved to see, and maybe, who knows, maybe if you find the time or the inspiration to see Bloom into her own book, maybe, because she represents, I think, powerful vulnerability, right?
Sure.
And people will understand that when they read the book more.
Well, Change of Heart is really Bloom. She is the female protagonist of Change of Heart. I mean, you know, but you would like to see it even more, you're saying.
I would love to see.
I love that character.
I would love to see her now, a few years later.
Okay, when she's mature.
Now she's like in the thick of her career.
In the thick of that's a good idea.
And maybe she runs into a situation where she has to actually get in contact with Miner.
Right.
I'm saying, right? Because it
sounds good.
Alive. But yeah, no, I really loved her character. I think what I will say this for people who are going to read this book. You did an incredible job at making this woman a woman in the book. I feel like sometimes authors, they don't really do justice to the full woman. And you carved out this woman, who was vulnerable, who was persistent, who was strong. You showed the multifacets of womanhood. All of those particular things. I think you did an incredible job at defining who Charlotte Bloom was and making her relatable and making her real. I think that's one of your skills, is making your characters real.
Thank you very much.
Yes, so I'm excited to read what's coming next. I'm instantly, when we're done today, going to go and get Dissection. I want that because that's will be just my weekend. And yes, this is wonderful. So everybody, and do you have a website, Christina?
Yes. www.ChristinaLaporte. Christina is CRISTINA LEPORT.com. And no H in Christina, ends with an A because it's Italian version.
Okay, and I will make sure I link that in the description.
Thank you.
When we publish. And so get out there, everybody, and pick up Change of Heart by Dr. Christina Laporte. Keep an eye out on future books and past books that have been released.
If they sign up on my web, then I can send them I can send them reports, announcements.
Newsletters. Okay, perfect. So
Newsletter,
sign
yeah.
on.
I put out announcements, and also please, please, please review on Amazon and Goodreads if you can.
Absolutely. Make
That's
sure
great.
that we do the
Thank
part
you.
because a lot of work goes into making these incredibly
Yeah,
crafted
a lot
books.
of work.
So we thank you for that work because this is
Thank you.
a very enjoyable read. Thank you for being a guest on the show today.
Thank you very
And
much.
we wish you the greatest of success. And for everyone out there, until next time, get out there and live your wildest dreams.
For media and sponsorship inquiries, email info@ccsims.com or visit ccsims.com and fill out the contact form. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. A new episode airs every Saturday. CKS Media.